Paul clearly grasped that God's mystery, previously unknown to other generations, was first revealed to him. The mystery centers around the salvation not only of the Jews, but also of the Gentiles, constituting a fundamental aspect of the gospel. Before the gospel arrived, the Jews believed that salvation was exclusively reserved for the descendants of Abraham. Consequently, the concept of preaching for salvation did not exist among them. However, when we establish the premise that salvation is extended to the Gentiles as well, the situation changes. This is because if salvation is offered to all nations regardless of their lineage, preaching the gospel becomes essential. Preaching the gospel is not merely a means of conveying information. It is a central truth that requires obedient action, and it fulfills God's eternal will. Believing in the gospel and preaching the gospel are inseparable. What is revealed as one body with the contents of the gospel is preaching the gospel. The gospel was not given for people to possess, but to share it with others. God used Paul's personality and his life to systemize the preaching of the gospel. Paul confessed this mission, saying, "I become a minister according to the gift of the grace of God given to me by the effective working of his power. To me, who am less than the least of all saints, this grace was given, that I should preach amongst the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ, and to make all see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the ages has been hidden in God, who created all things through Jesus Christ." Paul considered himself less than the least, acknowledging the great grace of God, entrusting him with the work of systemizing the preaching of the gospel. One remarkable aspect of preaching the gospel is that it employs sinners for this purpose. Indeed, everyone is a sinner, but what matters most is whether they acknowledge God's righteousness and their own unrighteousness. Those who perceive themselves as righteous come to conceal God's grace, and as a result, they cannot bear the fruit in preaching the gospel. Conversely, from those who have repented, God's righteousness is revealed, and thus, the same power of God that raised Jesus Christ from the dead and ascended him to heaven works upon them. This power transforms individuals who were once children of the devil into righteous ones who resemble God. God enabled Paul not only to proclaim the unsearchable riches of Christ, but also to lay the foundation for the systematic spread and teaching of it throughout the world. Preaching the gospel is the responsibility entrusted to the church. Therefore, instead of focusing solely on how we as individuals can personally spread the gospel with our own lips, we should consider how the entire church becomes one and systematically fulfills the work that God has given us. Let us restrain our greed and falsehoods by God's power and unite our strength to become an entire church that fulfills God's dream.